I had a really rather retarded moment yesterday, which I think you'll be quite amused about. Amused by? Amused by.
Amuse bouche.
I was, amuse bouche. I was, talking of food, I was cooking a rather lovely beetroot and goat's cheese risotto.
They're very nice.
Get us.
Very nice.
Get us.
Ah.
It involved cooking a little bit on the stovetop and then putting the dish in the oven. So I checked out my Scam pan. This is just getting more middle class, isn't it?
It is.
We got Scam pans, yeah? And
of course you do.
The Scam pans can go in the oven, so you can use them as a stovetop pan and also, like a casserole dish. So I did what I was told to do by the book, shoved it in the oven for an hour, and then when I went to get it out, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not stupid. Oven gloves, pop it on the surface. And then with my other hand, I went to take the lid off. I went, fuck, and dropped it, luckily not on a child's head. Went over to the sink, ran cold water over my hands for as little time as I thought I could get away with because I needed to get dinner sorted. And then went back, and do you know what I did with my left hand? I grabbed the handle.
That is special.
That's really fucking stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, good work.
Remarkably stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, well done.
Anyway, have you burnt any parts of your body this week?
I'm always red hot, Tom, so...
It's you that's doing the burning.
I'm doing the burning, yeah, I'm a fire hazard.
Nobody burns you. Well, apart from BBC.
Ouch. Ouch. For listeners, I edited the beginning out. Now we're going to have to leave it in. I didn't get a job this week.
I don't know where I sit anymore at the start of these recordings because I did try and make up silly stories and then you criticised them.
I didn't criticise your silly stories.
And then I
edited them heavily.
I then started giving you anecdotes about hydroelectric power. Got criticised for that.
You didn't. Again, you're taking being edited heavily as criticism. It's not criticism. I'm not actively criticising you. I'm just silently fixing you. Take it as a compliment. Fuck's sake.
It's like a Coldplay song on mute. Silently fix you.
Well, that's how to fix a Coldplay song. Mute the bastard.
I actually quite like Coldplay.
You quite like stories about hydroelectric power. That's the level of excitement you operate at.
Says the man with a train set in his loft. I can't help but feel there's a bit of pot kettle black going on here.
This is the man with the burnt hands calling the panhandle hot. Hello and welcome to That Was Genius, the little history podcast in which Tom, who's frightfully working class and comes from Hampshire...
Hello, I was born in Newcastle, don't you know? I'm a northerner, frightfully common, and awfully proud of it.
Oh yes. And Sam, me, who was born in Birmingham and is therefore officially a peaky blinder. Discuss history stories on a theme each week. The topic is decided the week in advance, but everything else that happens is a surprise. I'm also frightfully middle class. Cillian Murphy after he goes posh and gets rich. And what's our topic this week, Tom?
Is that what happens? I lost track of it. It got very violent in that series.
It got very violent.
Well, it started off
as rainbows and kittens. The Peaky Blinders Animal Sanctuary for doe-eyed, unadopted puppies and kittens.
It wasn't so bad.
And then the shooting started.
You can have too much of a good thing, can't you? It was like Suits. We gave up on Suits after about 3 seasons because we got so fed up with the smug twats.
Speaking of being a twat, Tom, what's our topic this week?
Yes, arsehole. I thought that was a passive-aggressive insult. And it took me a moment.
It was just a friendly cue in. To which the answer wasn't yes.
Arsehole youth, and I've got a cracking subject, and I was very, very rude last week in our Patreon episode.
You were horribly rude. I was deeply offended.
Record-breakingly rude source from the Restoration. Anyway, I'm very clean this week. Ooh. And just silly
like
instead.
Whistle.
Clean as a whistle. Clean and silly this week.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm clean and silly as well. We have some audience feedback, Tom.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Brennan Haag from Iowa sent us a message saying, I discovered your podcast a couple of weeks ago after hearing about it on The Constant, which is a podcast, very good podcast that we cross-promoted a little while ago.
Thank you, Constant.
Thoroughly enjoyed listening to your entire back catalogue of episodes, and nearly every episode has caused me to burst out laughing. I think I know the ones that haven't.
There've been one or two that barely made the cut. There was a bit of back and forth. Should we re-record? No, we're all right.
Yep.
We've only got 2 listeners at the moment.
The halcyon early days. It's been an invaluable escape from reality during these troubled times. Keep up the great work. Best regards, Brennan. P.S. No offence, but your American accents are pretty shitty. I mean, I'm going to take offence.
Where did you say he was from?
Iowa. Go on.
Cowboy Town. Iowa. Let's have a look at some pictures
well, its
of
flag
Iowa.
is French with an eagle, so there we go.
It is French with an eagle, isn't it? And suitably, the eagle's flying away. So very French.
Yes. No, you're looking at it in small view. The eagle's flying towards you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
And what's it saying? It's got a very big speech bubble.
Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. The eagle appears to be dropping the slogan. Not interested in that. Anyway, thank you, Brennan. And yes, Tom's reference 5 minutes ago, which is where we will rejoin the conversation after some hefty editing about the national bird of Iowa. Tom's doing an impression of a 90s British game show, Quelle Surprise, called Shooting Stars with Vic and Bob, in which one of the contestants, who was an American celebrity, he asked her where she was from and she said New York, and he said, Tom,
Cowboy Town.
yes, he did.
Which is obviously it's
the joke
funny because
is that it's not.
Yes. It's a joke on British ignorance of American geography, isn't it?
Ha! A double-layered joke because of American ignorance on world geography. Right. And that's for saying our accent's shitty.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you for the feedback.
And thank you for subscribing as a patron.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow. Kapow.
Right. Do you want to go first, Tom, or shall I go first? What's your choice? What's your poison?
Oh, I'm going to go first this week.
Are you? Good. This is high risk. I'm on my second whiskey, so if it goes quiet, prod me through the microphone.
I'm very well prepared for this episode because I accidentally thought up this topic
3 weeks ago.
A week in advance. Yeah. Anyway, that was good because it just meant I could get straight into it. And it also allowed me the time to go on a nice side topic. What would be a better word?
You pick them.
A nice deviation. I'm going to go on a British culture, pop culture deviation because I'm going to be talking about English private school rebellions.
Ooh.
And it made me think about the Bash Street Kids, where all the kids are posh, like Cuthbert Cringeworthy.
I think, do you need to describe the Backstreet Kids?
The Backstreet Kids.
The Backstreet Boys?
A mix of the Backstreet Kids and the Backstreet Boys. I'll give you a Backstreet Boys song. Come on.
That's an impression you're going to have to do.
Backstreet Boys.
Backstreet's back. Come on. Dun, 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 dun. Hey.
Brilliant.
Dun, 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 dun. Yes, the
I want it that way. Tell me why. Yes, no, the Bash Street Kids are very, very different to the Backstreet Boys.
Yes.
It's quite difficult now that you've got that in my head.
Yes.
So, no, I'm going to go on a very, very nice little detour.
Yeah, you need to describe, because no one outside of Britain and under the age of 30 is going to know what the Bash Street Kids are.
Okay, tell you what, park the Bash Street Kids for a moment and let's talk about the Beano. Because that's where we really need to start before we tell you who the Bash Street Kids are. It's a comic book. They're from a comic book. And the Beano is Britain's longest running children's comic and it's been published weekly since 1938 with only a few brief periods where they were published fortnightly, and that was due to ink shortages during the Second World War. And I say British, it's actually Scottish.
It is.
From a publisher in Aberdeen. And it's not superhero nonsense, so it's not that sort of now very, very cliche Hollywood superhero stuff. It's good old-fashioned silliness with recurring characters being very mischievous.
Basically, it's the funnies in the US.
What are the funnies? I've not heard of
They're the
funnies.
newspaper cartoons, like comic strips in
Yes.
newspapers, but it's a whole... Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. But it's they're
vein.
longer, and there's a number of them in the comic. And alongside the Dandy, which was a similar comic book by the same publisher, the Beano is a huge part of British culture. And the Dandy was actually started...
I don't think anyone under the age of 30 reads it.
No, well, that's what I was going to...
It's bought by people who used to be children.
Yes, well, we still get the annual as a family. So we get the Christmas annual, and that's in the downstairs toilet at the family home.
If you work through it slowly, you can make the pages last until you need to buy more toilet roll in February.
Oh, God, Sam, that's a heathen's thing to say about it. You do not wipe your ass with the Beano. God, I don't know. You'll be burning books next. The Dandy was actually started a year before, the same year as DC Comics in the US, but ended in 2012 after sales had fallen. And both the Beano and the Dandy used to have sales as high as 2 million per week back in the early 50s.
That is mad, isn't it?
Yeah, they used to be massive. Now I think the Beano sells in the hundreds, low hundreds of thousands. The Dandy got down to 8,000 a week, so they just had to scrap it.
Yeah.
The main recurring, and this is where we're going to get on to American pop culture as well, the main recurring Beano character since 1950 is Dennis the Menace.
Who is very well known, to be fair. There's been Hollywood films and...
Well, there you see. That's what I found quite interesting. So, Dennis the Menace is the comic strip that gets the front cover of the Beano, and our American listeners might be familiar with the American Dennis the Menace, which it's had 3 films, so that's what you're referring to, isn't it? And I remember the television series as well from my youth. Bizarrely, the two are totally unrelated.
What?
And coincidentally, both started at almost the same time, 1950 or 1951.
Really?
Yeah, so the two Dennises have always respected each other as well, so they've marketed themselves slightly differently in each other's countries. So Dennis the Menace is known as Dennis. Oh no, Dennis the Menace is known as Dennis the Menace and Gnasher in the US, and the US Dennis the Menace is known as Dennis in the UK. Completely coincidental, apparently.
Interesting. I had no idea.
And here is another really good fact, particularly for our British listeners. The name Beano is a shortening of the hyphenated word bean feast.
That sounds like a euphemism. That sounds like something from Urban Dictionary.
It does actually, doesn't it? I didn't think of that. Yes.
Bean feast. No.
It's actually a very innocent, slightly archaic term for a celebratory meal with lots of fun and laughter.
Well,
which, again,
that's pretty much how Urban Dictionary describes it.
This was going to be a clean episode. I was hoping this was going to be a clean episode. Yes. Anyway, where does the Bash Street Kids fit in with this? Yeah, it's been part of the Beano since 1956, and it just involves a class of misbehaving kids and a hapless teacher who is called Mr. Teacher and whose wife is called Mrs. Teacher.
Yes.
And there are characters like Plug, who's just really ugly, Fatty,
who's really fat.
Yeah, Fatty. Smithy's really thick. Spotty, I think, is spotty. And there's a few other ones. But
They kept
it's
it
very
simple
funny
for the kids, didn't they?
Yeah, and this Bash Street Kids cartoon is stuck in the 50s. So even though it's still a very popular...
It's never moved on, has it?
No, it's never moved on.
Neither have its fans.
Yeah.
Tom.
Beano's great. Anyway, back on track. Private school rebellions. There were lots of private school rebellions during the 18th and 19th centuries. It's just the name, just the word, the phrase, private school rebellions. How good is that? The reason for this, we will go into shortly. For those who don't know, there are a number of exceptionally old and elitist private schools in the UK. So, for example, if you look at a list of British Prime Ministers and their educations, you'll see that places like Harrow, Eton and Winchester and Westminster, all famous private schools, figure very, very prominently. Interestingly, not very prominently in the last 100 years. Barring Boris Johnson and David Cameron, none of them have come from Eton.
Interesting.
They've all come from lesser private schools. I was quite surprised
Still
by
private
that.
schools, but lesser private schools.
All comprehensives. So I think Thatcher and... I think John Major went to a comprehensive as well, maybe. Yes, so a number of small, very, very famous private schools that have been going on since, middle medieval period, Middle Ages. Winchester College had 6 rebellions during the period mentioned, this 18th to 19th century.
When you talk about rebellions...
Oh, you wait. What are you thinking? What would you think was a suitably radical rebellion for a private school?
Well, when I was a kid, we locked our art teacher in a cupboard one lunchtime.
Did you?
Well, I say we. I didn't. I had nothing to do with this. I'm a good boy.
Of course you didn't. And what happened to all the children that were involved in that high crime?
Nothing.
No.
They got away with it clean.
I remember we once locked our teacher out. That was funny. We used to slightly change the words on the chalkboard when the teacher briefly went out of the class. Did you ever do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
definitely. So you sort of rub things out, don't you? So poo's very easy because there are lots of circles, so you can easily form lots of poo. I distinctly remember, it was an animal biology lesson, I think. The teacher accidentally drew one elephant on all fours and another elephant on 2 legs, right next to each other. And she couldn't understand why, when she was facing us with the whiteboard behind us, everyone was in stitches. As the elephants humped away behind her. No, much, much worse than that. These Winchester College rebellions, one rebellion was over beer rations. How good does that sound?
Classic school.
Yeah. Another rebellion at Winchester College.
Miss, I'm barely wankered.
Where's my beer? I'm disgusted. Do you have any idea how much my parents pay for this? Because I don't. But I want beer.
Yes. Do you have any idea how drunk I want to be compared to how drunk I am?
Do you know who I am? Because my name is so long, if I start mentioning it, we're all going to be here until lunchtime. My name is Master
Bates.
Gordon Bates Smithington Parping Wilmsbury Kenneth
Branner.
The fourth. So another rebellion ended with the headmaster being held hostage by boys wielding axes.
Oof.
At Winchester College, yeah. There were 6 rebellions at Eton and 5 at rugby school.
When you say rebellions, talk me through what happened in these rebellions at Winchester.
Well, I couldn't find exact details of all of them, but I have got exact details for a couple of crackers, which I'm going to come on to. The rugby school one, there were 5 at rugby
Coming
school.
on to a couple of crackers. Actually, that's a public school game.
Christmas time, mistletoe and wine.
Coming on to a couple of crackers is what I believe is termed Limp Biscuits. There's a classic public school game.
Yes, and a band. There were 5 at rugby school, and we'll come on to one of those in more detail in a moment. In 1690, so slightly before the period we're discussing, students at Manchester Grammar School fought their teachers with firearms supplied by locals over the length of the Christmas holidays. So they were unhappy that they weren't getting enough Christmas holiday, so there was a full-on firearm battle.
So who armed the teachers in response? Or did the teachers just have guns in the classroom?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's getting very American, isn't it?
Yes, get the flintlock musket out. Also,
everyone has them.
What kind? Well, I suppose it is Manchester. What kind of local goes, hey up, lad, you look like you could do with a longer holiday. Why don't you take this gun and fuck your teacher up?
Fuck your teacher right over.
And you won't have to come back till 5th of January.
Instead of the 4th. Yeah. Well worth it. Well worth losing a couple of lives over that extra day. It lasted 2 weeks, this firearm battle.
Oh, the length of a Christmas holiday. Seems they won. It seems they won.
The students managed to lock themselves into the school and the teachers out as part of it. Talking of the military, in 1818, students at the Sandhurst Military Academy stood off against their teachers in full military formation. So... it's dangerous, isn't it?
Man the barricades. Yeah,
it's dangerous when you're teaching kids at a military academy how to get prepared for war.
Yes.
There was a particularly noteworthy rebellion that occurred in 1851 at Marlborough College when students rebelled as a result of an annoying, punctilious member of staff constantly picking them up for misdemeanours. And the students rebelled on fireworks night, blowing up a barrel of gunpowder and releasing fireworks. Classrooms were ransacked, bonfires built and chaos reigned. After 3 days, 5 boys were captured and expelled, but as they were carted off site, they were followed by all the other boys as a mob cheering loudly. And that mob was soon joined by local villagers who had nothing better to do. And when the expanded mob returned to the school, they beat up the staff member who was recording all the petty offences, burnt the headmaster's office, and threw away all the records of the misdemeanours. 1851 at Marlborough College. That sounds like great fun, doesn't it?
Apart from the beating up a teacher. Can't sanction that. But burning the headmaster's office, damn straight.
Damn right. Chef. And this is the rugby one that I mentioned a bit earlier. So another particularly good rebellion was at rugby school in 1797. This rebellion started when a pupil was caught shooting cork bullets at his housemaster's study's window. The student was caught and interrogated by being waterboarded with cold and lumpy canteen custard. No, he wasn't. He was caught, and
the story was just getting good.
It was getting very Beano again, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He confessed that he had bought gunpowder from a local shop. So again, the locals helping out here. The local shop was approached, and it denied all knowledge of this purchase and showed the school staff its sales books. And the boy was flogged for lying, and his friends took revenge on the shop by smashing its windows. The headmaster then demanded that all the boys from the rest of the year groups pay for the damage. And the boys refused and let off a bomb in the school. And I didn't realise... Yeah, let off a bomb in the school. I didn't realise this. Do you know the origins of the phrase round robin?
No. As in a round robin email?
Oh, I quite possibly, but a round robin, and I stumbled across this when researching this incident. A round robin is where...
The headmaster was Robin and he was left around the school after the bomb went off.
He was very fat. Very fat, as they used to call him round robin. A round robin is where you don't want to make it obvious who's the ringleader. And so you sign in a circle.
Ah.
So that's a round robin, so they don't know who the ringleader was. After the bomb was set off, the following day a full-scale rebellion broke out. Amongst all of the destruction, the boys created an enormous bonfire of all the school's furniture and very expensive books. The headmaster was locked in his quarters, but he managed to send word to the local town, and the local justice of the peace finally arrived at the school shortly after with some soldiers and local horse dealers with whips who happened to be in town for market day. The boys then retreated to a Bronze Age burial mound in the school grounds that has got a moat.
Of course, which school would be complete without them?
Yeah. That's private schools for you.
It is. They go their own Bronze Age burial mound.
Yeah, with a drawbridge.
I've seen quite a few horror films, and I know for a fact that all American high schools are built on ancient Indian burial grounds, so it's not that far-fetched.
When they could quite easily have been built somewhere else. Because that's the American respect for the natives. They pulled up the drawbridge and had their final stand on this Bronze Age burial mound. It didn't last long though, because some of the local soldiers went round the back and snuck onto the mound, and anyway, it took control of the situation. But that's a pretty impressive private school rebellion, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there was good reason for all of these rebellions. So during the 18th and 19th century...
Kids are dicks.
It was sixth formers. So a large part of it was the fact that they were boys going through that age where they're wanting to rebel, they want some responsibility, but actually they're still dicks.
Yeah.
Physically adults,
Been
mentally
there.
still a child.
Still there.
Yeah. But there were other factors as well involved in why these rebellions took place. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the standard of education at these schools had dropped massively, so redundant topics were still being taught simply out of tradition and not need, i.e. classics.
We went to university to study that.
Yeah. Rather than things that are useful, like engineering. And during the Industrial Revolution, some of the most celebrated figures in society weren't educated in the most prestigious establishments, so think of George and Robert Stephenson. Schools were willfully mismanaged by headmasters often, keen to make as much money as possible for as little effort, and a chap called Joseph Drury...
Still sounds about right for some private schools.
Yeah. A chap called Joseph Drury, he was a headmaster at Harrow School for 20 years, a famous school, and earned the equivalent of about £9 million in that time.
Nice.
Just abusing the system, basically.
Embezzling.
Embezzling, yeah. I think he didn't have any teachers, very few teachers and a huge number of students, and he just didn't really educate them properly. And his students lived in squalid conditions as well, with far less structure and supervision than they deserved based on what they were paying. And this seems to have been reasonably widespread. Students were bored and turned to scrapping and on the odd occasion organised rebellion. It's also worth pointing out that these kids were also spoilt brats who looked down on their plebeian teachers. There was also that. Alan Turing's parents were told that they would be wasting time at a private school if their son wanted to focus on sciences. Darwin said that the private school that he attended was shit, although they could well have helped him formulate the idea of survival of the fittest, because these schools were like Lord of the Flies, so the strong loved it, the weaker got bullied and hated it.
And everyone got fucked.
Everyone got baggered. Pitt the Elder, who was Prime Minister of Great Britain between 1766 and 1768, disliked Eton so much that he had his son, Pitt the Younger, educated at home. I couldn't find out what happened to his other sons, Pitt the Arm, Pitt the Cess and Pitt the Bull Terrier. These private schools eventually overcame the mediocrity and sort of regained their credibility and esteem.
His northern cousins, Pitt the Tar, Pitt the Coal.
Yeah.
And Pitt the Cockfighting.
Yeah. Yes. And so, yeah, these private schools just had that tricky couple of hundred years, but they eventually overcame this mediocrity and regained their credibility and their esteem. And there you go. But you can still be an absolute mental wizard, can't you, Sam, like us, by going to public schools.
You can.
Public schools being schools for the public instead of private schools that in the UK are called public schools, but they're private.
Yes. It must mean schools for public boys as opposed to private tutors, is I think probably what it means, but it's one of the things that makes no sense.
Stupid.
Yeah. But fuck it, Yanks say I could care less when clearly they couldn't care less. So we've all got our things.
They also call individual Legos.
Yes.
Fucking weird.
Yes.
No, it's a Lego block. It's a Lego piece. It's not a Lego. Makes me slightly angry when I hear it.
Well, we better move on quickly before you start a rant.
Private school rebellions.
Oh, well, very good, Tom. Although, seemingly not so much arsehole youth because they were more or less justified in some cases.
Yeah, they were in some cases. Probably, I don't think there are many justifications for holding a headmaster at ransom with axes.
If he's embezzled 9 million quid from the school.
I'm not sure it was the same one.
Probably not the same one, but...
Yeah, I mean, he could have been. That could have been why he was so wealthy, because he was headmaster at so many of these schools.
Yes, doing literally no work in any of them.
No.
Very good, Tom.
Thank you.
Very good. So I'm going to flip it around, Tom, and I'm going to talk today about one of the most pious, boring, straight-laced kings in European history.
Oh, who was that? Peter the Party?
Ronald the Rambunctious, yeah.
Barry the Bean Feast?
Yeah, Prince Paul the Partier.
Oliver the Orgier?
Prince Bartholomew the Binge Drinker.
Paul the Pub Crawl?
No, well, yes and no. I'm doing Charles the 12th of Sweden, Tom.
Oh, not him. Wanker. Was he worse than Cromwell?
Well, that's a big ask. It's a big ask to be worse than Cromwell.
More boring than old Crommy Boring Pants.
He was about as exciting as one of those small IKEA pencils. That level of Swedish boring. Charles the 12th. He's a king who didn't drink. He didn't shag around at all. In fact, he never even married and had a reputation as being completely celibate, though whether or not that's actually true, we'll never know. But didn't drink, didn't do anything exciting. He was a pretty good king all round. He fought a few wars. He won a few wars. He's generally considered pretty competent for most of his reign, which incidentally was from 1697 to 1718.
Yeah.
In fact, he managed to beat the combined kingdom of Denmark, Norway, Poland and Russia at the same... Sorry, that's the combined kingdom of Denmark, Norway and Poland and Russia at the same time, aged just 18. Snooze.
Bit boring.
Yeah. And he was eventually killed in 1718 at the age of 36 whilst invading Norway, getting himself shot in the head like a dick with grape shot from a cannon whilst besieging a Norwegian fortress.
And next week's episode is going to be on a topic... Oh, that's not it. Oh, sorry, there's some more. Sorry.
Pretty much done. And that's me this week, Tom. In fact, actually, since being shot in the head with a cannon, he's been dug up 3 times for autopsies after various rumours of nefarious or alternative deaths cropped up. And yes, each time the massive hole in his head has been pretty convincing evidence.
Alternative deaths.
Yes.
I like alternative therapy.
Indeed, yeah. He was given
deaths that don't quite work.
He was given a homeopathic death. He was given some water that had once been shown a bullet.
Yeah.
Which only made it more effective.
Or he had a very, very, very small hole put in him.
Yeah.
Arguably could be an injection, which could actually work.
Well, yes. It would be a bloody big injection, this one. An injection of a very large amount of lead, which also left his head again.
Was he after... How many kings was he after Gustav Adolfsson?
That's a very good question that I'm not going to look up right now.
Swedish Kings. Sounds like a good band name.
Yes, we sweet kings of Orient are eating meatballs
one like a
come
pumpkin,
from afar.
One root vegetable.
One self-assembly. Fit him all in your car.
Oh.
Right, have you researched this yet, or
All
are we going to ignore it and move on?
Gustavus Adolphus the Great, if I do say so myself. He ended in 1632, and then there was Charles the 10th, Charles the 11th, and then guess who was after Charles the 11th?
Peter.
Charles the 12th.
Oh, there we go.
He's got a very long face.
He does have a very long face, yes.
Awfully long face, and a rather big nose.
Something of the Habsburgs around him, yes.
He could be a very good velodrome cyclist.
He could.
Very streamlined head.
Yes, he looks a little bit like a kind of Mr. Incredible type character, doesn't he?
Yeah, Stretch Armstrong.
Yeah. So anyway, a pretty boring but pretty good king who was very young and did quite a good job and everyone liked until someone who didn't like him shot him in the face with a cannon. So, what is the point, Tom, in talking about him in an episode about arsehole youth?
Well, I don't know, Sam. It's your part of the recording.
It is, and I'm going to tell you. It's what happened in the summers of 1698 and 1699 before he became the boring, straight-laced king the Swedish people know and love.
I like the summer of... What was it again?
It was the summer of 1699.
Summer of 1699. Yes. Are you going to get onto that?
I bought my first real loot.
And
played it in the royal court.
Got a cannon, invaded a neighbour.
I got hit, my head came off. Now it's rolling down the hill. It'll be detached forever. That was the ending of my life.
Great.
There we go. Slightly forced, but
we got there in the end.
Yes, wait until I start singing Summer Loving Had Me a Blast.
Well, we're going to have to both do that, aren't we? Because it requires two parts. Shotgun John Travolta.
I'll be Olivia Newton-John. Go on then, you force my hand.
Oh, you in tight leather trousers, Sam.
Tell me about it, stud.
Exaggerate those skinny calves. Where have your legs gone, Sam?
You bastard. Like two upturned bowling pins.
Yeah. It's Oscar Pistorius.
He's still got bigger calves than I do. Are you okay, Jan?
Oh dear. Nothing quite like taking the piss out of a disabled athlete. Brilliant.
Disabled murderer.
Yes.
Anyway. Yes, Tom, the summers of 1698 and 1699, before Charles XII became the boring, straight-laced king the Swedish people know and love. Because, Tom, those were the summers... I'm so ashamed of myself. Those were the summers of the...
You're the of the two of us, you're the more self-righteous, and you're always the one that comes out with the disabled dicks.
Well, it's because I feel I've never felt any shame because my dad only had one leg.
Oh, it makes it all right then, doesn't it? Yeah, in that case, you can have a go at all of them.
It was a part of my childhood growing up.
Oh, you got cerebral palsy.
No, hang on now. I've only ever picked on amputees, as if that makes it better. Yes, Tom. The summers of 1698 and 1699 were the summers of the Gottorp Fury, when the young king went fucking mental.
Is that like a Swedish walkabout?
Where
you go and find yourself.
In a way, it was more of a
gap year.
More of a gap year, yeah. It was more of a...
More gap year to Kenya.
Less finding yourself and more getting very, very lost.
I'm going on a gap year to India.
Yeah, I'm going on a gap year to India.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Agra in India for my gap year.
Yeah, the hostel I'm staying in is a 5-star.
5-star in Agra, India, part of my gap year.
I've got to drive this car. Yes, Tom, this was the Scandi Scandal, worthy of the Marquis de Sade, a Danish dust-up that left the palace in ruins, the Norwegian nightmare night out. It was a booze-fueled bender that ended in a lost summer and very nearly lost a kingdom.
Like the Scandi Scandal, did you say that? That's good.
I did say Scandi Scandal, yeah.
Okay.
And as all great benders, Tom, it began with a wedding. Benders, by the way, in British parlance means a big night out.
Yeah.
So it all began with a wedding. Frederick IV, the Duke of Holstein-Gottorp.
Oh, I like him.
There's a title. Holstein-Gottorp, by the way, is my favourite discount supermarket lager brand. Came to Stockholm to marry Charles's sister Hedwig Sophia, who's not to be confused with his auntie Dumbledore Anne.
Although she could turn her head all the way around.
Yes, she could. It's a talent. Has its uses. She also pooed entire small skeletons.
I hate this position. How did you do that?
It rotates head all the way around. Stop looking at my arse.
I give you permission to slap.
Oh dear. So Frederick was 27, moving swiftly on, and a bit of a party animal. Charles was 17 and wanted to prove he could keep up. He'd just been made king, he had big dreams, and he wanted to impress his new brother-in-law, the Duke. Now, Charles had always been a tough kid. A fun little playground game he played growing up was dividing all of the palace staff and all of his friends into two opposing teams and then going at each other with sticks.
Nice. Stixies. Who's that for a game of Stixies?
Oh, not again. barely recovered from the spiral fracture of the wrist last time. They would literally go fighting in the palace courtyard with clubs. It was quite common for people to get killed.
Nice.
He'd also been hunting bears with a spear since the age of 12.
Nice.
Because he considered guns to be unsportsmanlike.
Well, it's true though, isn't it?
It is.
You pose over a bloody line that you've shot in the Serengeti with a great big automatic rifle you don't have to do anything with. Not very impressive.
No, there's not much sport to it.
Kill it with your teeth, and I'll take a second look at your picture.
I'll buy you a pint, yeah. But here was a new challenge. He'd taken on bears, he'd taken on the best of the palace staff.
So the best of the Stixiers.
Yeah. Stixies at dawn.
Yeah, the top Stixies in the whole household.
The stickiest of Stixers. But here was a new challenge.
What's brown and sticky? A poo. Carry on.
But here was a new challenge, Tom. A hot young duke let loose in a big city. And like all impressionable young boys with a troublesome friend, the two egged each other on into several weeks of madness. It all started kind of innocently enough, sort of. Whilst here in council, the king and the duke would eat cherries and start spitting the stones at whoever was crouched down in front of them trying to speak.
Nice.
A bit of a dick move. But what's the point in being a king if you can't gob on the Prime Minister?
Exactly.
Quote from Queen Elizabeth II. While shouting, "Who's a naughty boy?" to Boris.
Who's a naughty boy then?
It's just like being back at Eton. Boris loves it.
Yeah. Snuffles around like a pig.
Oh no, don't do that. Bad things happen to pigs at public school, as David Cameron will tell you.
Yeah. Well, they went to the same private school at the same time, didn't they?
They did indeed. Went to the same dinner parties. And so yes, it started off with just being a bit of a dick and gobbing food all over your senior government ministers. And then the drinking started. From April to August, the king and the duke were almost constantly hammered. Every single night there was no let-up. They egged each other on to do more and more stupid things as they were drinking as well. They shot out the windows of the palace with guns before throwing all of the royal furniture out of them. The throne was thrown, Tom, and the seat of power ended up in the flowers.
Nice.
Yes. They then, for larks, because released a load of rabbits into the parliamentary chamber. And then, when all of the MPs were confused about this, released a load of hunting dogs to course them.
Right.
So the government found itself in the middle of a melee of rabbits being ripped up by hunting dogs during the course of a parliamentary session. He then ransacked his own chapel.
Hold on. Go back a little bit. I bet that was hair-raising.
Oh!
Edit that bit in. Go on.
Yeah. They wouldn't shut up about it, Tom. They were just rabbiting on.
Oh, no!
Fairly frequently after drinking all morning, the pair would saddle up racehorses and ride through Stockholm at incredible speed, with their swords out.
I say.
Picking the wigs.
Hello.
Yeah. Sabres out, lads. But this was, and I'm amazed that no one got hurt doing this. They would ride around with their swords out and basically use their swords to pluck the wigs and hats off anyone who they could get close enough to, terrorising the people of Stockholm.
That one.
Yes.
Chopped his head off. Oh, well.
Fingers.
Oh, it would appear that I've just chopped off someone's head. Oh, well.
I still got his wig. 1 point to me.
That makes it 99 to 98.
Keep up, Frederick, you arthritic old prick. So, yes, they would ride around plucking their wigs and hats off people's heads, encouraging gangs of kids to join in with them as they rampaged through the town, leading them on a race through the streets.
Dun, 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 dun. You're picturing it, listeners.
Yeah, you are. Ironically, Rocky is a kind of IKEA table lamp.
And Dolph Lundgren, who plays the Soviet guy. He's Swedish.
Is he?
Yeah, connection. He was a Swedish discus thrower, I think.
Interesting.
What's the guy's name in the film?
I can't remember, but that is actually one of the things that's vaguely back to the story. Haha, segueing neatly, you won't get away that quickly. One of the things that Charles and Frederick would get up to every night is they would take the royal plates at dinner, wait until they were piled high with food, and then frisbee them across the Great Hall.
Wow.
Pinging them at whoever happened to be in the way. Basically, but just a bit of a dick move.
Ivan Drago. Of course it was Ivan Drago.
And they would. So after riding around all day terrorising the citizens, their horses would fall down dead of exhaustion. They'd buy another racehorse.
This is fun.
Animal cruelty is wonderful.
They couldn't carry the 105 heads I collected.
Yeah. And so at this point they just buy more racehorses and do exactly the same again once it got dark, before riding their horses around the inside of the palace instead. In one instance, they even, quote, snuck into, fuck knows how they managed to get in without us spotting them, into the Queen Mother's bedroom as she was playing cards, before kicking the horses into a frenzy and frightening the shit out of her.
I bet.
Presumably hiding them behind a curtain.
Yeah, crikey.
There are even stories, probably untrue, that they actually had a competition one drunken night between the two of them to see who was the strongest swordsman, by bringing an entire herd of sheep into the throne room of the palace and decapitating them one by one with a sword until someone got tired, which, rumour has it, wasn't until the floors and stairs of the palace literally ran with blood.
I mean, they could have just sheared them, couldn't they? And that would have been
they could have
equally
done.
As skillful.
And less violent.
And you would have got a woolly jumper out of it. Yeah.
Indeed.
Or a nice new bed sheet.
Yes, and apparently after decapitating the sheep, they threw the heads at senior politicians.
Fair enough. Gave them the horn.
Quite. I say, you. Yes, sire? No, that was a warning. You.
Bonk.
Crack. And this went on from April till August 1698, until eventually Frederick actually got married to Hedwig Sophia, aka Professor Snape, and buggered off back to Holstein Gottorp. It was only then that Charles finally, after several months of drinking, woke up, realised it was 3 months later, and he had a raging hangover, a sheep's head and 1,000 powdered wigs in his bed, and realised the terrible mistake he made of the last few months. It hadn't helped matters that he was a very religious king, and, as you can tell from his past few months' behaviour, God all the way, God first. The senior preachers of Stockholm had all begun to preach against him on Sundays, something he was absolutely mortified about, and it got to the point where there was even the risk of a popular uprising against him. He'd been so badly behaved. He immediately gave up drinking and women and turned to prayer and architecture instead, the boring fucker.
Yeah.
But it did probably save his rule. It's entirely likely that some of the story is completely made up by people and journals and newspapers at the time who were trying to undermine his rule, or at least try and get Duke Frederick out of the picture. And in fact, the Duke was given the mocking nickname of the Gottorp Fury for the rest of his life, after the name given to the events. And yes, it's entirely possible that there would have been a public uprising, and that Charles's government ministers would have been at the front of the pickets once they'd managed to get all the sheep's blood and seeds out of their wigs. He did have one relapse, though, because the next summer, 1 year later, Frederick came to visit again. In this instance, during one particularly drunken night, there was a bit of a ruckus coming from the Great Hall, at which point a very drunk bear, who'd been force-fed vintage wine, fell through a window and dropped 3 floors into the courtyard below, dying instantly. At which point, Charles apparently appeared at the broken window, half undressed and with a bottle in his hand.
They just knocked him. What had he done? Had he knocked him out?
Well, we don't know. We don't know whether he knocked the bear out in a fist fight or just force-fed it so much booze that it got paralytically drunk and fell out of a window.
Stumbled out, yeah.
Yeah. At any rate, when he woke up the next morning, his grandma told the Queen Mother, who he'd previously snuck a racehorse into her bedroom, told him what he'd done, and he was absolutely mortified. He was so ashamed for falling off the wagon that he did actually completely give up drinking anything for the rest of his life, except beer. He allowed himself 1 beer after every battle that he won, which is possibly why he won so many of them.
I'm desperate for some booze.
Yes. But actually it had political repercussions being a bit of a twat for a year. Because later in 1899, spurred on by, in part, the fact that he was perceived as an insolent, drunken arsehole boy king who couldn't lead a pub crawl, let alone an army, That was why, one of the reasons why, Russia, Poland and Norway, Denmark invaded simultaneously. Fortunately, by this point, Charles had finally sobered up, and clearly all those games of sticky stuck with him. Stixies, because he pretty roundly twatted every single country that attacked him. But there we go, Tom. That is the Gottorp Fury, the 3-month bender of King Charles XII of Sweden.
Do you think it actually happened, or do you think it's a bit of a William Hague? Do you think he's just trying to impress everyone because he was so beige and
I know,
boring?
some of it definitely happened. Whether it really was as bad as people say, nobody knows. But he did have 2 really bad summers of drinking.
You don't think it's PR team? You need to go to Glastonbury and get fucked and go on stage.
You need to go up and interrupt Stormzy's set and start freestyling along.
Yeah, and saying out, I'm going to give you everything. I'm good. Yeah, my government's going to pay for everything. That's what you got to do. That
doesn't sound like anything that would happen today.
No, could possibly happen. Good story. I like it. That's good as well because I don't think we've done any Swedish.
No, it's been a while.
Early modern history, have we?
It's been a while, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, I was pleased with that one.
When are we going to do the Greece thing then?
The musical or just ancient Greece? Because
I thought you were going to be Olivia Newton-John, weren't you?
That was just a joke.
And I was going to be JT.
No, that was just a joke.
You can call him John Travolta. I call him JT.
I thought you meant Justin Timberlake.
Because we're good friends. No, I'm not good friends with Justin.
Good. Should we find a topic for next week?
Yeah, well, have we got any that we haven't yet?
No.
That we need to honour?
We've got a clean slate.
Oh,
so we need to pick 2. We need to pick one for the patrons next week.
Okay.
And then we need to pick one for the public.
Okay, discus throwing. Let's do the Olympics.
You can't just do the Olympics. You do sport again. We've done sport before.
Let's do Olympics. Look, you can do just the Olympics, can't you? You can find a silly little story for the Olympics.
All right, then, fine. Let's do the Olympics next week for patrons.
Okay.
And then...
in honour of the fact that it's not going to take place.
Yeah, absolutely.
For next year.
And after that, why don't we do...
let's do boy bands.
Boy bands. We could do bands.
We could do bands. Let's do bands.
Let's do bands. Okay, bands. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Olympics and then bands.
Perfect.
Sweet. And if you do want to be part of the patron party...
there ain't no party like the patron party.
There ain't no party like a patron party because the pastry's puffed and fresh. Vol-au-vent? Yes, you can join the Order of the Bath by going to patreon.com/thatwasgenius, or you can find it through our website, thatwasgeniuspodcast.com.
Good for networking as well, isn't it? You can just sit in the bubble bath, and just network with all the other people.
Absolutely, yes. You can have a power lunch.
Yeah, it's only very powerful, elite people.
Yep. You'd be doing yourself...
no riffraff.
You'd be doing yourself a favour. To be honest, I would say that it's basically a tax-deductible expense.
Oh, for most people, undoubtedly.
Completely. So yes, do get your accountants onto that. Unless you are an accountant, in which case you're not going to be fun enough to be listening to this podcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Just search for That Was Genius. Or you can email us, thatwasgeniuscast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts, any episode suggestions. We would love to hear them. Saves us the challenge of trying to find one ourselves. And other than that, we'll see you next week, I guess. Unless you're not a patron, in which case we'll see you in 2.
We'll see you soon anyway.
We'll see you soon. Miss you and love you.
Bye. Wazzies. One more.